Hi, Dan from Mea Culpa Hobbies here, and today I want to talk to you about something that's near and dear to my heart, Warhammer BloodQuest. Now, as I alluded to in my introduction, Warhammer BloodQuest is something that's very special to me and has quite an important place in my own hobby story. It represents probably my favourite time in Warhammer history, when the product spoke to me most directly, but it's also one of the main products, along with the fantastic THQ Space Marine game, that got me back into the hobby. So this is the newest version of Warhammer BloodQuest. This was just released in November of 2020. But before we get to that, let's talk about where it began. This is issue 1 of Warhammer Monthly, which was published in 1998. The BloodQuest story is prominently shown on the front in some glorious cover art. This was an anthology series of comic books, which, much like 2000 AD, another brilliant British comic, would give you the beginning, middle or end chapters of any continuing story, and you'd be incentivized to carry on collecting the comics to see what happened to your favourite characters next. And although not very well remembered, this story not only introduced us to characters that are still going in the 40k lore today, but also introduced at least me to some of the authors still working for Black Library like Dan Abnett. And these stories weren't unpopular in their day. BloodQuest in particular was an incredibly popular story for Warhammer Monthly that continued for many months and even ran over 3 full volumes that would be later reprinted in very sought after editions that I was never able to find. These characters were so popular, in fact, and the lore so well known, that Captain Leonatos received his own mini, and they even made an appearance in the 4th edition Blood Angels Codex. The story itself, written by Gordon Rennie with art by Steve McNeil, was the story of Captain Leonatos and his group of Blood Angels trying to regain their honour by recapturing a lost Blood Angels relic. Beyond that, BloodQuest had an audio adaptation made by Black Library that I can't say I've ever listened to, and was almost even a film. The trailer of which you can still find at glorious 240p on YouTube today. And that brings us neatly back to this edition, which was actually the first time I read the story in its entirety. As you can see, this omnibus is much smaller than the newer edition, or even its original printing comic book. It's also quite hard to find. It used to command massive prices on eBay and Amazon, or at least it used to when I was first looking for it. In this smaller format, the art is slightly squished, and sometimes it's hard to read the dialogue. But it's still glorious in its early 90s Warhammer aesthetic. Just look at this! And this. Whatever these guys are up to. But if this sounds like something you would be interested in, then the easiest way to read this story today is this newest edition that's just been released by Black Library. If you've read the Ephrahel's Storm Demon Fuge book that was recently released, this will be no surprise to you in the way it's formatted. Not printed in its original order, strangely. If I find the... Here we go, here's the first story as it appeared in the first issue. You can see it's actually not the first story in this edition. It does at least reprint every part of the original trilogy in perhaps an improved order. And normally, as a comic book fan, I swear away from recoloured work. I enjoy black and white comic books, and I think to tamper with the original artist's intent often results in an image that's clearly been overly digitally manipulated and actually detracts from the original artwork. But saying that, in this edition, it's been done very well, in fact. The artwork may seem quite flat on the earlier pages of art by Colin McNeil, but later, when he really got into the story and perhaps he was given more time to create the art, The painterly tonality that he used in his later art really shines through. Perhaps it's not quite as clear, but it still looks glorious. And when exploring the Eye of Terror, those colours really shine and pop in a beautiful way. The colorist hasn't been credited on this book, and GW often doesn't really credit their artist, which is a great shame to whoever did this fine work. Although this book doesn't necessarily fit in with the current fluff and lore, the Space Marines may be characterised slightly oddly, and although the story suffers occasionally from being printed 2 pages, maybe 3 pages at a time in its original form, it's still a great read for anyone who loves Old Hammer. It certainly taught me a lot about the world of 40k, the Chaos Gods, the way the Astartes work, and I can't wait to really dig into my perhaps 3rd or 4th reading of this book now. Thanks for joining me today. Please do like, subscribe and comment if you can, and hopefully I'll see you next time on Mea Culpa Hobbies.